Okay, welcome everyone. We are here today to talk to you about testing. We're going to talk about how to think about email tests in general, how Pardot features can help you take testing to the next level, and we'll share some great takeaways specific to nonprofit fundraising. And Pardot is used by hundreds of nonprofits, but they're generally so busy that they don't necessarily talk about the mechanics of how they set things up. And so I'm really thrilled today to be here with World Food Program to get into some details of how nonprofits can use Pardot. And with every organization's move onto Pardot, there's a story and there's people who've advocated for that change and for internal training. And this is really, really true with World Food Program. So I hope they will be an inspiration to all sorts of folks on the call today. So today, what we will be covering is what caused World Food Program USA to move on to Pardot initially, how we applied a crawl, walk, run approach to Pardot adoption, how we now test everything in order to optimize donation appeals, and how you can encourage a culture of testing at your company. I'm Kirsten Kippen. I've been working with World Food Program USA for a little over a year now, and I'm based in Portland, Oregon, and work with Idealist Consulting, who's a top Salesforce partner who helps nonprofits and other progressive organizations develop and use Pardot, as well as many other Salesforce tools, including Communities, Nonprofit Success Pack, and Heroku. And joining me today is Sheridan.
Hi, I'm Sheridan Marfil, and I'm the Director of Digital Fundraising, where I oversee the World Food Program USA's email program. And World Food Program USA works with individuals, businesses, and policymakers to advance the World Food Program's mission of eradicating hunger around the world. So just a little bit of a shout out today. Earlier today, we received the Nobel Peace Prize for our work this morning. And so if you'd like to watch the ceremony, feel free to pop over to our Facebook page after this session and check it out.
That was good timing, having that coordinated with ParDreamin. Very thoughtful.
So 2020 was an exceptional year for World Food Program USA. We were in the midst of our migration to Salesforce and Pardot, right in the middle of it. And then we got hit with COVID-19, which World Food Program is responding to. After that, we had a very busy summer and fall season for hurricanes and other natural disasters. And then like when things were, quote, starting to slow down, we received the Nobel Peace Prize. So high profile emergencies and media moments are crucial to our fundraising strategy, and we bring in a bulk of our revenue through these channels. So unprecedented donations, people were exceptionally generous in making donations to help communities around the world during COVID-19. And we were just getting a lot of press around that. And in addition to just our regular work around natural disasters. So in 2020, because of all the craziness, we brought in 50,000 new donors, or a 200% increase. However, in the past, we'd see a steep drop off during non-high profile moments. So we have a strategic partner who helps us with our email strategy as well as our data. And that firm is M&R, and they did a data analysis and they found that only 76% of new donors remained subscribed in their first 3 months, and only 52% opened an email. So we knew we had a lot of work to do to retain these 50,000 new people on our file. But since we gained so many new donors, we found the perfect sample size for testing. So taking you back, before we adopted Salesforce and Pardot, we had a really difficult time segmenting, which in turn gave us a really tough time giving our donors and non-donors a journey. Our data was kind of all over the place, and we couldn't really use any findings to run consistent tests or see anything statistically significant. So we have 4 buckets in our list. We have donors, sustainers, which are monthly donors, lapsed donors, and non-donors. And so, like I said before, we had no real journey. A really big part of our strategy is upgrading existing sustainers to a larger donation or getting one-time donors to commit to a monthly donation. And then the other thing is we had no preference center. So if folks unsubscribed, we kind of lost them forever. There was no way for them to pause emails or just kind of self-select which kind of emails they would get. So when we were coming up with our strategy for Pardot, we had a really great list of ideas, but we realized we kind of needed to do a crawl, walk, run approach, and Pardot was the perfect solution for us to do this. We brought Pardot in November 2019, thinking we could actually use it for our end of year fundraising, which was, I think, a crazy idea. We sent close to 25 emails in the month of December, starting off with Giving Tuesday and different variations of those emails. So it actually will be closer to maybe like 40, 50 emails. So in addition to that, because we were migrating over to to Salesforce, we had to bring in a new donation form and payment processing platform, Springboard. So we were all doing this at the same end. And then at the same time, in addition to having our busiest time of the year where we gain a bulk of our revenue, so we decided to actually wait until after the year-end push, because we weren't quite ready to come out with all of our new toys in the middle of year-end.
And that meant you could really get comfortable with the data in Salesforce before automating everything in Pardot too, right? Which I think in hindsight was so important for every aspect of what we did together.
We had, and this actually just reminds me that in our previous CRM, we had 160,000 names, which is great, but not really great because actually only 50% of those names were good emails. In our previous system, we were hit with a bulk of spam attacks. I'm thankful to say we haven't gotten that with Pardot, even though we've gotten more attention this year. And so we had all of these bad names. We had to do a really big data cleanup before we brought anybody over to Pardot. We really wanted to start in Pardot new. So over the next several months, we really spent time with idealists, learning the system, how Pardot works, how we can set it up for our best purposes. And we finally sent out our first email, I want to say February, March, and it was the most, the softest launch. It wasn't anything big. It was just a welcome series to our new donors. But we were also prepared to start testing everything. And this actually was the perfect email to launch because we found in that first week that there were some glitches that we need to fix. And if we had gone out with a full-on appeal with new donations and everything, it would have been harder to spot, I think, that mistake or harder to take it back.
Great, and I see a question that maybe we can just answer quickly about the structure of their Salesforce. And so Marcus was asking if they're using person accounts or just regular leads or contacts. And World Food is using contacts. So there's a setting. Now I'm going to forget the technical term for it. Somebody who knows Pardot can chime in and chat. But there's a setting so that you can make new prospects created as contacts only instead of leads. And that's something that we find really helpful for many nonprofits who don't necessarily use the lead object as heavily as private sector companies. So they're using the nonprofit success pack with contacts, and then opportunities are used for donations.
Yep. And so after
that,
we launched multiple. Yep. So after that, we launched multiple welcome series. Again, in our previous CRM and our previous email provider, we only had one, so one size fits all. And it really wasn't the best way to, welcome folks if you made a monthly donation or if you didn't donate at all. So today we have 3 welcome series: a non-donor, donor, and sustainer. And we find that prospects will never be more engaged than during our welcome series. So We actually ask our non-donors for a donation right away. We ask our donors, our one-time donors, to either become a sustainer or to make another donation almost right away. And same with our sustainers, we ask them to upgrade right away. But we had 4 emails in our original welcome series, and we've really toned it down to just 3. And the length of time in between them has also shortened. We're really trying to get it in, the ask in, and to, you know, get it in as quickly as possible, because like I said, that 76% drop off is there. And also we did testing and we found that there were emails that people were not really engaging with. And for us, it wasn't really worth it to continue to send if it was going to hurt our deliverability. So what else
Right.
do we test? And I'm actually going to turn this over to Kirsten.
Yeah, so Sheridan will tell you in a minute about the specifics of what they test. And we don't have time, unfortunately, for an in-depth Pardot demo. I wish we did, because they're doing so many cool things. But a few of the Pardot features that I just wanted to call out that you're going to be seeing referenced in the next couple slides on the screenshots are split lists. So World Food ended up kind of like testing the A/B functionality in Pardot to begin with, and I think they used it a little bit, but they ended up using split lists more heavily because they wanted to do tests with specific segments, and that was easier to do through having like a donor list or a lapsed donor list, and then splitting it and running the test between the audiences in that way. They've recently started doing a workaround, I think that was suggested by Serkante actually, about using formula fields to, or it's not using formula fields, but having a number field hidden on the Salesforce side that has an auto number generated to be able to split for an engagement studio test. And so that's something they've started doing recently. So we've kind of worked together to develop some solutions there. And they've also been using HTML merging and dynamic content pretty heavily. And so you'll see merge tags and things like that in the next couple slides. And if people have any specific questions about that, feel free to put it in chat. So we're going to get into a few of the specific tests that they've run now.
Yeah, so one test that we ran recently was our click-through link size. So our click-through rates, we noticed we were not reaching benchmark, and I'm going to plug our firm again, M&R for nonprofits. They come out every year with a report called Benchmarks, and it shows email and fundraising and social media across a number of different nonprofit sectors, and that's kind of where we measure ourselves against. And so we noticed that we were off the benchmark for click-through rates by a little like 0.1 to 0.15%. So we were trying to figure out what's a good way to if we could raise our click-through rates. So we decided to try a link size test. So right now our email font size is a 14 pixel, and we just decided to bump it up to an 18, which really doesn't, you can't really tell. It just looks a little bigger, but we were going to give this a try and see if it encourages people to click through. So we ran this over several emails and campaigns, and we actually found that it did not have a significant effect on subscriber behavior. So click-through rates were about the same, and it didn't really affect our conversion into making a donation. So we just decided to keep our link sizes the same and have it consistent. But that is just one example of an easy test that you can run. It's not very difficult to implement.
Yeah, and I'll say real quick before we move on to the next slide too that World Food is pretty unique in that the call to action they have is almost always donate, right? So there's not a whole lot of other things that they ask of their audience, and so that's a really interesting way to be able to just test so many different things if you have a consistent call to action, whether it's donate or something else.
Mm-hmm. The next thing that we tested were transactional headers, and transactional headers are actually very easy to implement. We take something important looking like a field in Salesforce, like a Salesforce ID. Put that in, and then for folks who have not donated yet, we put in red, no donation yet. And we put this above any copy, above any salutation. And we decided to see if we wanted to see if this would work. So we ran this again across a couple emails, and we found that the transactional header did have a difference, a pretty big difference actually, in terms of conversion. So having people donate, and it was pretty jarring. I think that just that little piece of text above the fold made a big difference. The other side of that is that we also noticed a slight increase in unsubscribes. So I think it's important when you think about testing, is it, for us, it's worth it to gain the revenue to not, a unsubscribe rate that's 0.03% higher than our control is not huge to us. It's okay for us to do that because we gain the revenue. So it's important to think about what the balance is, or what the, breaking point is for you. And this test we actually ran just over our Giving Tuesday campaign, so just a couple of weeks ago. And again, we're still trying to figure out the sweet spot for click-throughs. So we did a hover test with link color. Basically, when you hold your mouse over a link, it would change the link from blue to red. So we saw a 9% increase on results with the higher click-through rate, but we also received lower revenue. So again, this is where you have to decide which is more important. For us, we were testing click-through rates, so we just needed to ignore the revenue side to stay within our goal, because for us, it was more important that people click through, even though the revenue was a little lower. Test in progress. So we're always testing. Every email that we send has a test attached to it. So we're testing to see if it's worth it to include the organization name with the sender name. So right now we have a split test between Sheridan from World Food Program USA or just Sheridan Marfil. Right now the preliminary is showing that just my name works better than having the organization name. And then the other test that we're going to be doing this year is plain text emails. So we've done a lot of testing in general with our templates, and we found that our template design works for us, and this is the best way that we can get conversions. So they're not like very, very pretty, but we're trying to take it all the way back to plain text to see if an email that looks like it came from just your Gmail or your Outlook really would make a difference. So do donors respond better to plain text? So we're going to be testing that, and we're actually adding that into one of our automated series. And how do we set up our testing? So we identify a clear goal and strategy, and then determine how the tech around it can support it. So we meet with our partner again for longer tests monthly. So that can be anywhere from just email, but also our donation pages. So everything we test, it's holistic. And then my internal team, we review our testing calendar regularly, so we can ensure the plan for the next few months, and then that none of our campaigns really is test free. Again, it's really easy to implement these tests, especially with Pardot. And so having a test tied to every email that you send, you're able to get results really quickly, or putting them in any of your automated series, you're able to get a good sample size pretty quickly. And again, it's really easy to implement, especially with an automated series. So how do you set up a culture of testing at your organization? Well, again, we said we make it a goal to test every email we send. So it's nothing surprising to my leadership that we're always testing something, and that we always track and report our test results. So when I, talk about revenue that was gained per email, I also talk about open rates and click-through rates, so that the organization kind of understands that we're tracking all of these. We put this in a central location on a Google Doc so that everybody can see it, and that we're all on the same page about it. And then we lean on our templates. So we've built 4 templates, and we've again tested and honed it into these 4 templates, and we can switch it around, but the templates have made it easier for us to just implement really quick tests or just turn around and email really quick. So that's been really, really helpful to us, and having that in Pardot has been huge, especially in our year as crazy as 2020. And then again, I mentioned that user automated series, they go out every day. So we're able to get some learnings because they're constantly running and collecting data, and we're able to see it over a really long period of time. And the other thing I think is also making sure that you need to revisit tests. So we don't just test things once and then forget about it and we're like, this is it for the rest of our email program. We revisit all the time. So that sender name, we might revisit it in a year and see if the email file has changed. But yeah, that's kind of it for what we do for our testing.
Great. I love that point about coming back to revisit previous tests too, because like you say, you're getting so many new donors all the time that, you know, what worked in the past may not work in the same way in the future, or may work even better in the future.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's all we have today. And at this point, we have maybe just a couple minutes for questions. If anyone has any questions about specific tests, how we set this up in Pardot, other nonprofit sort of related questions. I'll just give people a minute if there is anything else. Okay, there's one from Jennifer here about what's the smallest sample size that you would use for a test?
So I guess like that's kind of an interesting question because our welcome series has been kind of crazy right now because we've been gaining a lot of new donors. But I mean, our sample size is pretty much with what Kirsten said with our split lists. So it's like our full file for our bigger campaigns. So that's something like, what are we up to now with our, like 90,000?
90,000 or so, yeah. But then
90,000, yeah.
Lab specific ones are a little smaller.
Yeah, so about half of that. So that's our larger end, and then the welcome series is anywhere from 100 to like 300 people depending on the week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point, though, that if your email file is significantly smaller, it can be a little bit trickier to really get meaningful data from a test.
But, in those cases, I would just run the tests for longer until you get something statistically significant.
Sure.
Let's see. From Kristen, what do you typically test most, subject line or photo? We typically test, we're actually going to be running a photo. We don't really do much with images, and that's something that we really would like to do more of. So it's mostly stuff within the copy using conditional content. Subject line every now and then, but it's mostly within the copy. So saying how we would donate, to a person, saying make a gift versus like, here's your donation now. But yeah. And then from Kristen, another Kristen, any test that you tried that didn't work? The link test didn't work. That was kind of surprising. There are a few, and I cannot remember off the top of my head, but we've definitely run tests that didn't work. And then on the donation form side, this is kind of a little bit off Pardot. We play a lot with when people land on the landing page. So I guess you could do this within Pardot as well. what an ask string would look like. And so sometimes we'll try playing a little bit with the dollar numbers on there. And we've added like little buttons that say like most people are donating this or donate this, and we haven't really seen any conversion on that. So yeah, it happens all the time. And that's fine too, because sometimes the test that didn't work where it's not statistically significant, we don't want to hurt our conversion. So that works for us as well.
Great. Well, I think that's all the time that we have for today. So thank you everyone for joining. Feel free to reach out to Sheridan or myself if you have any follow-up questions. And here are some of the sessions that are coming up in the next few days or so.
Thanks.